Alright guys, so today we're king mackerel fishing, and in this video I'm going to do a complete guide start to finish on how to catch king mackerel. This is going to be a video on how to catch the fill the cooler, keeper size, the schoolie size king mackerel, one after another kind of bite. It's not going to be a video about catching the giant smoker kingfish. That's a completely different method. You can catch those giants using this method, but we're not targeting those specifically. We're targeting the average size kingfish. So I am in East Central Florida, leaving Cocoa Beach, Port Canaveral. If you are in this area, in the description below I'll put 2 coordinate locations for places where you can get started. But these methods can be used anywhere in the world that there's king mackerel around. It's absolutely the best method. It's what the charter guys use. It's what commercial guys use because it works. You know, plain and simple. They don't have time to waste. They have to fill the boats, and they have money on the line, so they have to do it. So why not do the same thing, right? It works. So again, I'm leaving Cape Canaveral, Florida. I'm going to go ahead and leave the inlet here, and let's get started. All right guys, we're offshore. King mackerel's the target. Listen, this is a very easy fish to really become a pro at catching them, honestly. It's a very simple tactic, and I feel like I've got it mastered down, and I want to share it with you guys because if I go out kingfishing, typically I fill the cooler up. So what we want to do, first I want to talk about where to find kingfish. Honestly, you can find kingfish anywhere from the beach, running all the way out to about 180 feet of water. If I had to narrow that down to a more precise depth range, which I will and usually do, 70 to 130 feet of water is about perfect for what I like to do. 70 to 130 feet of water. The water color is also super important. You're going to want to be in that green water, not blue water like you'd be fishing for wahoo or sailfish or dolphin. You're going to want to be fishing in that kingfish green water. Some people call it dirty water, whatever you want to call it. That's the water color. So watercolor, green, depth range 70 to 130 feet. All right, let's narrow it down even more. King mackerel are going to be where the bait's at, okay? It's not like let's say sailfish, for example. Just because you found bait doesn't mean you found sailfish. Just because you found a floating pallet doesn't mean you found wahoo. If you found a bait pod in 70 to 130 feet of water in that green color, you're going to find the kingfish. They're going to be on that bait pod. They're going to be on them all day long, okay? They eat all day long. They're super aggressive. They're killing machines, honestly. So they're gonna be on that bait all day. So if you find the bait and you can stick with that bait all day, you're gonna catch kingfish all day. So they're actually really easy to find. Again, stick in that depth range. Where you're gonna find the bait is you're gonna find bait on structure. Natural, artificial, ledges, live bottom, doesn't matter. So if let's say you're going to a new area and you want to have a starting point, you're gonna look for maybe public numbers, public coordinates that are going to put you on wrecks and reefs that are in that depth range, okay? And that's a great place to start. Start bouncing around those reefs until you find that bait pod. Another thing is when you're bouncing from reef to reef, if you find a big bait pod crashing on the surface with birds diving or that sort of thing, the kingfish are going to be right there with it, okay? You found the kingfish if you found the bait pod on the surface, 100%, they're there. So that's always a beautiful way to find the king mackerel, is when you find birds crashing into the water. They just made your day easy. They're there, you know, you're done. So what I recommend doing is Listen, I don't care if I leave the inlet and it takes me 2 hours to find the fish. I'm not gonna start fishing until I find the fish, okay? Some people will leave the inlet and get too excited. They'll start dropping baits in the water, get down to a trolling speed and just blind troll, okay? I don't recommend this. You can get lucky, however, you can also get skunked, okay? This is not the way to do it. Find the fish, drop the baits in the water once you find the fish, and I'll tell you what, you're gonna catch them all day long that way, and you're gonna fill the coolers quick. That's the method that I do. That's the method that I recommend. 9 times out of 10, you're gonna catch more fish this way. So don't get too excited, find the fish, and go from there. Let's talk about the method now, okay? Forget any other way to catch king mackerel, okay? Forget any other way. The only way that you ever need to do to catch these fill the cooler, schoolie size king mackerel is going to be trolling with planers, okay? Now let me talk a little bit about, because trolling with planers for wahoo is different than trolling with planers for kingfish. So I'm going to have a specific video on how to troll with planers coming out. I'm not going to get too into that. However, I will get into the kingfish side of it. And I'll tell you that the magic speed for king mackerel is 5 to 7 knots, which equates to about 6 to 8 miles per hour. Usually I like to stick to the lower end of that. So I'll start at about 6 miles per hour. And if I'm not getting them to hit and I'm marking them on sonar, I know they're there, I will increase the speed a little bit. But start with 6 miles per hour, 5 knots, and that's that sweet spot to me. What size planers you're going to want to use is going to be depending on where the king mackerel are in the water column. Sometimes they're going to be deep, sometimes they're going to be near the surface. So really it just depends. If you're marking the bait and the king mackerel in the top third of the water column, you're going to want to go lighter on the planers, maybe a number 1 and a number 3. If they're down in the middle, you're going to want to go with maybe a number 2 and a number 4. If they're deeper, maybe a number 3 and a number 5. I always go in increments of 2. I want my planers in different depths of the water column, and I want them different distances back from the boat from each other, because you do not want to tangle planers. It's not fun, and you just don't want to do it. So definitely different depth ranges, different distances back. Now let's talk about that a little bit. The lighter of the 2 planers, I always troll 2 planers at a time. The lighter of the 2, I'm going to set out first, and I'm going to set it farther out from the boat. It's about 150 feet, and then that's where my first one's going to go. The second bait is the bigger planer, and I'm going to set that one out about 100 feet back from the boat, so they're staggered. I always go in increments of 2, so if I'm using a number 1, I'm not going to use the number 1 and the number 2. I'm not going to use a number 3 and a number 4. I'm going to use a number 1 with a number 3 or more, a number 2 with a number 4 or more. That way they're different, they're nice and far away from each other in the water column. The gear, real quick on what you want to do, trolling with planers is not light tackle fishing. You're going to need a relatively heavy setup. At a minimum, you're going to need like a Penn Squall type deal, a TLD 30, or something of that sort. But what's more realistic is having a bigger conventional reel. 30 to 60 pound class rod is minimum. That's what I use, because I like to be as sporty as possible with it, while also preventing your rods from breaking. You know, because there's a lot of tension on these planers, and if you don't have the right gear, not only can things break, but also if you don't have enough drag on these reels, then you're going to be creeping drag out the entire time, because these planers have so much resistance. 80 to 100 pound braid. Okay, planer trolling is all about braid. You're not going to do this with mono. There's too much stretch. You're not going to be able to trip the planers when you need to. It's harder to set the planers. The braid also cuts through the water easier, allowing that planer to get down deeper where it needs to be. Off of your planer, you're going to be using 100 feet. No more, no less. Trust me, 100 feet's that magic spot, that magic length. 100 feet of 50 pound or 60 pound fluorocarbon or monofilament leader, whichever you prefer. I use mono. I don't see a need for fluorocarbon here. I use monofilament leader, 100 feet. I keep this organized on a yo-yo, so I can pre-rig this in the garage. I can measure 100 feet out, put a snap swivel on either side, so it's ready to hook up to the planer and send your bait out. And that's it. It keeps it organized, transfer to and from the boat, and when you're setting it out, it's nice and easy coming off of the spool. So again, I'm gonna do a future video on more specifically how to troll planers. I'm gonna get down into detail about every little thing. But as far as the king mackerel goes, that's really it. You're gonna wanna find the king mackerel on sonar, find out where they are, base your decision on planer size off of where they are, and you're gonna troll 2 planers. And real quick, I also always send out a surface bait. If it's not rough, I'll send out 2 surface baits off the sides of the boat. If it's rough, I'll send 1 shotgun down the middle, send it far back, okay? This surface bait sometimes gets smacked all day long. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you catch a sailfish on it. Sometimes you catch a king mackerel on it, but I always have it because there's just extra chance of catching that fish. And sometimes it's that big one. So I'll send that surface bait back as well. So I'll troll a surface and 2 planers, and usually that's perfect for me. Baits. There's no need to get fancy here, okay? There's no need to get fancy with king mackerel baits when you're catching these schoolie size king mackerel. Literally, it comes down to this: drone spoons and strip baits. That's all you need to do. Forget everything else. Okay, there's no reason to troll with anything else when you're targeting king mackerel. So drone spoons, wow, these are incredible. They're not too expensive. They have crazy action in the water. If you send a drone spoon around a king mackerel, he is going to absolutely demolish it. There's no way he's not going to. It's just, it has crazy action. It mimics a bait fish that's injured, that's swimming through at 5 to 6 knots, hauling ass away from something, okay? It's gonna attract the attention of the kingfish and he's gonna strike it, okay? But I don't like to send two spoons out because let's find out what they're really hitting that day. So I'll send out 2 different baits, always 2 different baits, and find out what's hitting better, and then I will adjust accordingly. On the other bait, I will use a strip bait, preferably strip bonita, but if you have strip, whatever you can find, strip mullet, sardines, cigar minnows, whatever you can find, they will take. I like bonita though because it's the meat and skin is thicker and it holds onto the hook better. It doesn't wash out as easy as some of the other baits. However, you're going to get strikes on either. On top of that, strip bait is going to be a squid skirt. Okay, that's going to prevent the bait from washing out. Also give it a little bit of flash, a little bit of presentation. And then on top of that, you're going to put a sea witch. The sea witch is not mandatory. However, I find that it is a beautiful addition because it adds so much presentation and it adds so much, it works in the water column and in the water, and it looks amazing, and it attracts the attention of the king mackerel, and that's what you want, right? You want them to, you want them to see it, you want them to attack it, and you want to reel that fish in. So do whatever you can to increase those odds. And I find that the sea witch, it attracts more attention and it gets hit more than if I did not have a sea witch on there. So that's the baits. Again, maybe the strip baits are on fire that day and you troll 2 strip baits. Maybe the drone spoons are on fire that day and you decide to troll 2 drone spoons. But there's no need to get fancy and start trolling all kinds of, rigged ballyhoo and all that stuff for king mackerel. There's no reason for it. Keep it simple. Simple is fun, right? Simple is fun. Whatever works, works. Just do whatever works. Also, real quick, I know a lot of people like to use wire leader for king mackerel. Yes, they do have sharp teeth. However, I find that when you're trolling with planers and lures, you don't need wire leader. Yes, you will get cut off. Yes, you will lose some gear once in a while. Yes, you will also get 3 times the amount of strikes on mono leader instead of wire. You also increase your chance of catching other fish such as tuna and that random dolphin that's where he's not supposed to be. That stuff does happen when trolling for king mackerel. Also, it's just, to me, it makes more sense to catch more fish and potentially lose a couple along the way than to put the wire leader on and catch less fish but not lose any. 9 times out of 10, what I find with my experience is that I fill the cooler up faster and more consistently when I don't use wire leader. I've had days where I've used wire leader and I wasn't getting any strikes, and I'm marking them on sonar, and I'm like, what is going on? I removed the wire leader, and for the rest of the day, we were getting kingfish one after another. It blew my mind. Since then, I am absolutely adamant about not using wire leader when I'm trolling with planers, and you're gonna end up landing most of these fish, and you're gonna get a couple cutoffs. And the best thing to do is just realize that, hey, it was just another king mackerel. Tie it on and go catch another one. Tie another bait on and catch another one. It's not that big of a deal. So that's my recommendation. If you do decide to use wire leader, I wouldn't use more than about 6 to 12 inches, and I wouldn't go heavier than number 4 or number 5 max. There's no need to go heavier than that with these. We're not fishing for giant wahoo, 120-pound wahoo. We're fishing for these schoolie-sized kingfish that are gonna fill the cooler up and lay them out at the end of the day for a nice picture and have fun all day. That's what this is about. So if you guys have any questions, comment below. Again, this is about catching large quantities of kingfish. This is not about catching that smoker kingfish. You will catch the occasional big kingfish trolling planers. 100% it happens, but we're not targeting the big ones. When you target the big ones, you are basically eliminating the smaller ones. You're trolling way bigger baits, and you're doing a completely different method. You're not using planers. So I'm gonna do a video on that in the future. You will catch less king mackerel, but when you do catch them, you're gonna catch those big monster smokers that everybody wants to catch. So make sure you subscribe to my channel. That way you can watch that video when it's out. I will try to do it as soon as possible. And again, thank you for watching the video. Please like and subscribe, and let's fish.